So, hello, we're here. So exciting to have so many people here. Heidi, do you want to start out?
Sure. I'm Heidi Brislin. I'm an occupational therapist and assistive technology specialist. I work for the Edmonds School District in Edmonds, Washington. I do a little bit of work for SETC, and I am doing some collaboration with ESD 114 over here on the Kitsap Peninsula. So that's a little bit about me. I am an OT, but I am a literacy junkie. I believe that being able to read and write is an essential occupation, and for it to work well, it requires all of us to jump in and help.
Absolutely. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Redman. I am a special education teacher by trade. I also have an undergraduate in elementary education. So I've done both, but have mostly taught individuals with low incident population, individuals with AAC with complex communication needs and complex bodies. I also am an assistive technology specialist and have my ATP. And I'm not over in my old stomping grounds where Heidi is on the Kitsap Peninsula. That's where I was just about a month ago, but now I have moved over to the East Coast, and I'm living in State College, Pennsylvania, where I am studying and I'm currently a PhD student in the AAC leadership project at Penn State and in special education. So I'm pretty excited and stressed out. I had 2 tests yesterday. They went fine, but so it's new. It's a new thing, new learning. So welcome everyone. Throughout our time together over the school year, we're mostly going to be working with these two tools for communication. One's Mentimeter, kind of introduced you to that a little bit earlier, and the other is Jamboard. And so our hope is that everyone will get really skilled and experienced in using that. And so we will dive into Jamboard just a little bit. We have an exercise at the end for you guys to do to get ready for their next time that we meet together. So, all right, let's get started. So Heidi, do you want to talk a little bit about this professional growth plan?
Most everybody here, there are a handful of people who are from out of state. Those people from Washington, in addition to the clock hours you'll earn from SETC, for this course, you can also go to the OSPI website and fill out a professional growth plan, and you get 25 additional free clock hours. And so basically, you fill out the form and document a project for the year that supports your personal learning as an educator. And so basically, you're going to be working on, strategies to improve literacy skills for students with complex bodies, complex communication needs, or whatever you want to whatever you decide to kind of put in there. In June, you show it to a colleague. Your colleague signs it, you turn it in, and you get 25 clock hours. So a great way to you can do one of these a year. So great way to get some extra clock hours. So wanted to make sure you knew about that as well, because we're going to be doing deep dive and learning a lot of stuff throughout this book study. So it's a good professional growth plan.
And it looks like Edmonds folks have just a little bit, few more extra pieces that they need to do. And so I'm sure they know more about that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let's get to it. We have a lot to talk about this evening. So this is our agenda. So we are going to be talking about 3 chapters of the book, and do not stress, there's no test at the end. So if you haven't read it yet, read those chapters, that's okay, because we know many of you had either just signed up or just got the book. So we're going to be doing this webinar a little differently, or this time together, sorry, a little differently than we plan on for the rest of our time together throughout the school year. So today we're going to do this more like a webinar. You're going to hear Heidi and I talking quite a bit about these 3 chapters. And then as we go forward, we slow down quite a bit and we start taking 1 or 2 chapters at a time. So please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We will, both Heidi and I, we have our chats up, and so we can stop at any time and try to answer those questions. But we do have a lot to go through. You'll have an opportunity at the end to put on a Jamboard some noticings through these 3 chapters, some questions that you have, and kind of what your own learning, what you want that to look like. Again, that really helps us kind of structure this so that it is really geared towards our group. And I would love to say it's a small group, but it's not. It's quite a big group with 84 of us, so which is awesome. That's amazing. But we want to make sure that we also make this personal, and that every one of you get out of this what you came here for. So we want to make sure that happens. So before we get started, I think it's really important to build a foundation and have some norms as we go through. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, I think that if we have this common language moving forward, that we have this kind of presupposition of our learners, that this makes our time together very meaningful. So 1, we are here, we have the understanding everyone, and that means everyone, all learners can learn to read and write. Sometimes it takes them a little bit longer than maybe their peer who also has some learning struggles, but everyone can learn to read and write. It's the one comment that Heidi and I hope that we don't get. Well, yes, but I can't do that for my learner in my school. And that's just not true. So we really want you to kind of open up the possibilities of what this book and the discussions that we have can do for your learners to teach them to learn to read and write. We're going to be presuming potential for learning with everyone, everything and everyone, including yourself. Like you can, have that mindset, that open mindset, learning mindset as we go through. We really look at things as we're going through is that it's not the act of enter anything you want, but it's the process of learning. So it's not the act of writing, but the process of learning to write. It's not the, act of learning my letters, but it's the process of learning to read, right? So it is the process that we are really encouraged and really excited about, not necessarily just the act. Sometimes I think, as a teacher, I get really concerned about those IEP goals and being able to take data. And we can do that with this. We can do that also with that process of learning. And so we want to make sure that we're always thinking about that process and how our learners can engage in that process. Modeling aided language stimulation, modeling writing, modeling reading, all are so important for all of our learners to have those models. And then providing access to, what do they need? Fill in the blank. Providing access. That's what we're here to do, is to provide access to the curriculum, provide access to their IEP goals, provide access to the environment, provide access to reading, writing, communication, providing that access, even listening, even being able to learn how to learn. Providing meaningful opportunities for all of the above. And meaningful opportunities doesn't mean that it has to be a drag and it doesn't have to be boring and we're falling asleep, but that it can be very fun and meaningful for our learners. How can we find engaging activities that are meaningful for them so they find that, I'm going to say it again, meaning in what they're doing? And again, that we want to go forward where we're always accepting all communication attempts, all writing attempts, all reading attempts, and that we do celebrate and provide meaning as we teach, because it's really, this is hard. It's hard stuff, and we need to celebrate. And if anytime we can find a way to have a party, I think that's a great time, great things to do. So coming together and having these kind of as our foundation, as our thinking, as we go forward, I think is going to be really helpful as we start having these conversations. Heidi, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to add is, common language. I mean, I love having we have this common language, but I think there's one piece of our common language I would love to see go away.
Mm.
Those are the words of describing a student as so low or too low, because I've never met that student.
Mm-mm.
And so
Yeah,
when we describe someone like that, people, you don't presume potential. And so I would challenge all of you to remove that from your vocabulary, because if we haven't given them a way to communicate, we don't know what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one thing I would challenge everybody to try to figure out how to move that out and see the potential in every child.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important. Thanks for that. Okay. Okay, so just a few more bits before we start getting into chapter 1, but I did want to just take a moment. I think it's important only, as a teacher, I had to, well, now I'm a student, but as a teacher attending all of, right, because our children, our students, our learners, our general education students first, right? And so they have the right and access to the curriculum. Our teachers, our gen ed peers, teaching peers are going through changes within reading curriculum, and the pendulum is changing and swinging. And the science of reading, I'm sure that you've heard that term come through, and we need to see how are we correlating, how are we aligning what we're suggesting and what we're looking at within this framework, within this book, within literacy, comprehension literacy for all. And so I just wanted to take a moment. I really love looking at Scarborough's reading rope, and because reading, writing, listening, speaking are so intertwined within that process of learning to read and write. And as you start pulling those strands apart, you can start seeing the pieces that are incredibly important to create and for our learners to become readers and writers, right? And so when we look at this, there's two strands of this rope that Scarborough talks about. This upper strand that talks about language and comprehension, right? And then the lower strand, which talks about the kind of more of that phonological awareness and word recognition. And one of the things that I think that this framework of this book does a really nice job, and almost for the first time, that as far as I have seen in my special education career, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, is we finally have this framework of research to give us a place to start with language comprehension. I've seen a million IEP goals of being able to read 20 sight words, 50 sight words, but I haven't seen many reading goals with our learners that talk about schema, that talk about vocabulary, understanding, and looking at language comprehension, which is vital in order to read. You have to understand that's the whole purpose of reading, is understanding what you're reading. So I feel that there is alignment within what we're doing. So if your peers are talking about, well, how does that align, or your administrators are asking, how does this align with the science of reading, that these areas do align. It's research-based, and we will be talking a lot about that. But so I don't want to go in too deep. I know I just found out, and I'm so excited. So is Heidi, and Kristen just from SETC just mentioned that David Koppenhaver, one of the authors of this book, is going to be coming and chatting with the SETC group. He's going to have 5 different conversations starting in January, and we don't have dates for that yet, but come and look for those. And if you can make it, that's going to be great. He's really going to talk through some of the misconceptions, through some of the ideas within this book, and give us a really great deep understanding. In what better way but then to talk to the author, right, of this book. So if you get a chance, do that, but please watch for those coming up. If you have more questions about this, please, put it in the chat. I can stay after. We can talk a little bit more about that. I'm definitely not the authority on it, but I see the alignment here. So, okay, Heidi, anything else you want to add to that?
You got it.
All right, here we go. Okay, so why this structure? So in the book, you'll notice that you usually start in chapter 1 and then you go all the way to the end. And we've disrupted that a little bit. And there's a reason why we disrupted that. And the main reason is because as a teacher in the classroom, I just don't have emergent learners in my classroom. I just can't say, sorry, only going to take emergent learners, or I can't say, sorry, only conventional learners can come in through here. Like we don't get to do that. We have all these beautiful learners come into our classroom, and we may have an emergent learner and a conventional learner sitting right next to each other. So when we're looking at having these discussions and looking at this framework of this book, we felt that it was really important to maybe kind of mix it up and disrupt that that ordinal progression, and instead look at through concepts. So that's why we're starting with chapter 1, 2, and 6, kind of that foundation of this book. And then we're going to go into reading comprehension for emergent and conventional, writing for emergent and conventional, word work and phonological awareness for conventional, and then add in that self-directed reading, which is in there as well. So just a little note, like we were wondering, like, why aren't we going on to chapter 3? So that's kind of why. So, all right. Next, the focus for literacy in comprehensive literacy for all. This is my fine feathered friend right here, making sure that you're watching and you're paying attention, because it's important that he has opportunities for literacy.
And I love the quote on this page, because really what literacy opens the world for our students. So, by giving them
Hey, sweetie, where's Fallon?
I think someone might have their sound on. If you could make sure that you're muted, that would be great. Thanks.
Anyway, so like this literacy gives our children that we work with so many opportunities. It increases their ability to be employed, to be able to access social media like their peers. And then it enables them to have greater choices over medical procedures, therapies, and other important life decisions that so often get made for them. So, literacy for the students that we're talking about here, and all of our students, literacy for all of our students is life-changing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. If there's a spelling error, I apologize. I thought I caught them all, but I will make sure. Thank you, Joshua, for letting me know. I'll make sure I fix that later. Okay. All right, Heidi, I think you really wanted to take the lead on this. This chapter 1, which talks about that theoretical rationale for emergent literacy. So the why.
Yeah.
Why?
And I think so it's so important to kind of know what our why is, because I think like the last slide talked about, it's going to improve their access to so many things in life. Our why, the rationale for the reason we do this is, we really want all of our kids to be readers and writers. It may look different. We talked about there is no prerequisite beyond life. And so again, those words that make my flesh crawl, no one is too low. And it exists on a continuum that begins before birth. So the research kind of shows that, the fetus hears all of the things that you're saying and sounds and intonations. And so that's, literacy starts well before we get them at age 3 in preschool.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even, the idea of literacy being reading, writing, speaking, and listening, they may not be reading or writing or speaking in utero, but they sure are listening, for those of our, in utero friends that don't have a hearing impairment, they are really hearing that. But, so yeah, super important. The only prerequisite is to breathe. I can't remember the author of that, but I just read that the other day. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And then
more whys,
lots of whys. And so one of the things is all of the reading and writing behaviors and understanding that precede and develop into conventional reading and writing are really important. So all of those scribbles, when we get to the alternative pencil and emergent writing, you'll hear me talking about the importance of scribbling. Students seeing you read and write and, talking about it as you're doing it. And then, just all those language skills that emerge from, learning, from peers and interactively and, through that whole back and forth kind of discussion continuum. It's important that, all our kids are there for that conversation to develop all of those really beautiful skills.
And again, you see it here again, that reading, writing, speaking, listening is all intertwined. I'm sure many of us have seen, little kids like pretending, to read their book and having some of those pre-literacy activities are just so important to creating those emergent literacy skills. More why.
So this is something, the first one as an OT is really important to me, that the functions of literacy are just important as the forms. I would say the functions are even more important because if we don't teach students, I'm going to use writing for an example. Kids come to us at school and, we're starting to teach like how to form the letters and how to write. And some of them have not even had the opportunity because of their disabilities, their social family situation, their language that they speak at home, to be able to like even learn the functions of writing. Why do we write? Because I don't like to do things that I don't know why I'm doing them. So I think it's really important that we remember to talk about what are the functions? Why do we read? Why do we write? And give them things to where you're, teaching them those functions, and then, give them real world writing experiences within the context of things that are meaningful to them. I think my least favorite writing prompt in the world, I know it was my children's least favorite writing prompt. Have lots of tears on Sunday night about the Monday prompt for what did you do over your weekend? And so it needs to be things that they're exploring the real world, that have meaning to them. And it's taught right in the context of doing, those different activities or learning about the things. So I think that's really, really important. And I think we forget the function as special educators and we go right to teaching the forms.
Yeah. And, I think the forms are sometimes we get stuck on because it's easier. Not necessarily easier, but it's easier to take data on, right? And so it's easy to see if they wrote 3 letters. It's easy to see if they wrote it in a certain size. It's easy to see that form if that's done. And one of the hardest things to teach is writing. I'm glad you brought it up, Heidi, because writing, we have lots and lots of, when you look at the research on reading and you look at the research on writing, just within our neurotypical peers and our typical developing of those skills, there is the discrepancy is huge on the amount of research that we have towards writing compared to reading. And so when you break that down even further and then look at the research on writing with complex learners that have complex communication needs or complex bodies, it's even less. So us being able to kind of now start flipping that and saying, the function or the process of that literacy is so important. We need to know how and what to write, and how to become an author, that's way more important. We'll figure out the form. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that access out. We just can't let that be a barrier to learning how, right? Learning how to be an author and how to be a writer. So, and then, yes, real world experiences, and the modeling is just so important in that area, is to be able to see that. So, Vicky just put in our chat, the easiest to measure doesn't make the best goals. Reminds me of the new Washington SGG emphasis too. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. Teaching is hard. Learning when you have a complex communication need or a complex body, and just learning in general is tough stuff. So we need to look at those pieces that are really the meat and the most important pieces, even though that they're hard. Okay. So here we go. We have a moment to breathe. Now it's your turn. So any big noticings? I know many of you haven't had an opportunity to read chapter 1. It's okay. This is not a testing situation. We're not going to test you. We do not have an IEP goal for you to do this. So it's all right if we don't have a big baseline, that's fine. But any surprises or anything like that, throw that into the chat. Anything that you notice during this why that maybe kind of stuck out to you as oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. I know it happens to me so many times where I write in the sides of this book, and you'll see my book is, and if you're, I think this is my copy of comprehensive literacy for all, and it's all marked up and stuff like that. And I have little things in the side notes duh, Redmond, why haven't you been doing that? So any noticings that you can see. And so emphasizing the process. Yeah, Ashley, I love that. Modeling, of all areas of listening. I think we're starting to get really good. I'm going to be very positive about this modeling of AAC and modeling language and having more symmetry on that in their AAC modeling of that input. So, but we also need to be modeling all those areas. So
and Joshua, you're speaking to my heart here.
Yeah, I just went back so fast. Heidi, speak to that.
Yeah. So are these issues more systemic or individual based on educator? I think it really depends. I think a lot of them are systemic. It seems the definition of literacy and learning is grounded in ableism, and this is us trying to dismantle it a small piece at a time. That is so true. One of the things I'm really trying to get our district to do is we've had all this diversity and equity training, but none of it has covered ableism. And I hear so many ableist comments come out of good intention teachers who don't know that that's really what they're saying or doing. But I think, Josh, you're right. We need to dismantle that a piece at a time. And it's,
there are so many disability models that have been out there that have really, I just read an article. Well, I'm reading a lot of articles lately, but I just read one that talked about the different disability models and how that really has really have created, in which we don't even know, of different biases. The medical model, that there's something wrong and we need to fix it. And, there's so many different models that I don't even think unless we really examine that ourselves and look at those biases, I think that we need, it's just a moment to self-reflect. So. Progress, not the product. Yeah, Trish, I think that's great. So
Stephanie talked about the 4 things you want to know in order to determine if the student would benefit from comprehensive literacy, conventional literacy, versus emergent literacy, and helped her think about what her students need and where they need to start with.
Yeah, I like how with Carol that it struck her that the process of learning to whatever that is, as opposed to the act that. I think that that's great.
And
Love
then,
the hand clapping. Thanks, Vicki.
and then Jennifer talking about the sentences. This sentence spoke to my heart too. We believe students with significant disabilities must receive highly effective instruction in order to learn and write. That is so true.
It is, and it starts with us, right? It starts with us. One of the things that I'm sure you'll hear David Koppenhaver speak to when he comes to talk, but he said he would rather have everyone try every part of the book, do all of the parts of what comprehensive literacy is, and maybe not do it well, but do all of them rather than just do one at a time and get good at that, because our students just don't have time for us to figure it out yet. So, and that's okay. It's okay for us to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I actually had a video, but I knew we wouldn't have time to highlight. You guys will see videos throughout the year of me making tons and tons of mistakes. So, and I think that it just talks to that piece of trying it, and it's okay if it doesn't work. It's okay if it doesn't work the first time. Just keep going. Reframing learning failures as a singular instance that indicates teaching failures. Natasha, we actually have that quote in here. You're ahead of the game. Someone read the book, Heidi. This is exciting. Someone read the book. All right, we're going to get going. Okay, we're going to do a little check-in here because I know it's a lot of information. And so we have our friend Nicholas Cage here. And based on Nicholas Cage's face, I want you to, there's a QR code. I want everybody to get that QR code and go to Menti and to see what that looks like. So let me go up here. I think this takes us to it. All right, so you should have the face. And if you need me to put that QR code back up, but just taking a breath, how are we feeling so far about, I know you had a long day of teaching, I had a long day of learning. So how are we doing? So that's what that's going to look like. And then I'm going to come here to my results. Nope. Sorry about that. I thought I had it all set up. Voting. Here we go. Oh, I'm going to do excited. I'm going to submit that. And then I'm going to go get my presenter. Sorry, everyone. I thought I had it all set up for you to see the results. So you're probably all going crazy. Let me get back to my, and let's present. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So we have 13 people excited. That is very, very exciting. I love that, Heidi. Some relaxed. A few stressed out. That's okay. We'll get there. A few meh. Feel like somebody has some bees inside. Okay. All right. But focused. All right. I'm going to say that based on this, that we have a lot more people excited and focused and happy. A few that it's a little stressful. A few that are feeling like, oh, it still is the beginning of the year. I totally get that. Totally understand that. But I love Menti being able to just take a minute and do some of these fun things. So, okay. I'm going to X out of that and come back to our slide. Okay. Okay. Well,
lot to process.
we're a little over halfway through. Say that again.
I said it's a lot to process, so I get
it's a lot to process, and we are.
So thanks.
Yeah, we're going through 3. I mean, Heidi, how many times have you read this book?
By 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm probably on my 5th or 6th read, and every time I go through this, I learn something new, and I'll share, like, as we go through each area, like some of my duh moments. So, like, I have plenty of them. So it's a lot to take in. But that's why we're here. And again, this model that we're doing tonight is not one that we're going to be doing for every time. So it's really, we want everyone to be more engaged with us, but there's just so much content to get through.
So I love this list in the book. It just really was powerful that the elements that make a successful reader is having a knowledgeable other. So having a knowledge, those of us who have who are taking the time here in this book study to learn the best way to teach our students with complex needs to be able to read and write. They need a means of communication and interaction. So getting that AAC started, whether it's light tech, high tech, but getting their communication system started early with everybody modeling. It's just not the role of the speech therapist to work on modeling the AAC. It's, everybody. That's the only way we're going to learn to speak the AAC, and that they're going to learn. It's like Spanish immersion. It needs to be AAC immersion. You want to repeat with variety. So often our students with who really struggle with learning, they get the same activity over and over and over again. And there's no variety, and we wonder why they're not learning or carrying it over. And so we need to really look at how are we going to repeat this and shake it up a little bit between how are we going to find things that are cognitively engaging to them, that that they're engaged in, and then how are we going to help them understand, do that modeling to give them that cognitive clarity, and then that personal connection to the curriculum. I love having like the students choose something to write about. Like we might pick a book that we're doing, and then we're going to publish something. We just did one of my teams did like Pete the Cat's shoes, and everybody got to pick like the color of their shoes and find different shoes in that color and write a book and publish it. And, they all had that connection to what they were learning, and really encouraging risk taking. I think of my students so many of my students who are like, on the spectrum, they might have complicated bodies where if I'm going to do this, it takes a lot of cognitive and physical energy to make this happen. So I want to know if I take this risk, you're going to be there and cheering me on along the way. I think is so important, and that the instruction covers everything. It's not just one little thing. We're not just working on that sight word goal forever, that we're looking at all the areas of literacy, and that we figure out how to do some significant time allocation. And I know that really some of my teachers are like, whoa, I don't have that time. And it's like, it's little snippets throughout the day. It doesn't have to be like, okay, I've got the students that can sit for like 10 minutes, maybe less, and we're going to do like a 30-minute reading block. That's not going to happen. I mean, you just snip little things in there throughout the day and throughout their care needs, because these students are complicated, and just have really high expectations. I think if you ask anybody, but I believe the assistive tech program in Edmonds' role is to help teams become, oh shoot, my brain just stopped.
Become experts, right? Or to become learners themselves, and to be able to take what you have. I don't know if this is, I'm not in your brain, so I'm not sure if this
my
is
brain is
going, but
but be able to teach students, have those high expectations that they're all going to become readers, writers, communicators. They're going to be able to move their body independently in some way. And that's kind of like my mission. So when I go and meet with a team about a student, that is where that's where I'm coming from. My goals are so high, and I just keep feeding people Kool-Aid, and it's amazing how they come right. Once you see the magic happen, it's just beautiful.
And high expectations doesn't mean that we are asking our students to go outside of that proximal development of learning, right? I mean, we as teachers, that's our job, to make sure that the learning is within that proximal level, right? Vygotsky, I think, has proximal levels of learning. So it's important that we distinguish between high expectations. Doesn't mean like, I want them to read, Moby Dick, and they are non-readers. Like that is not what that means. Now, what it does mean is that if their peers are in 10th grade and they're reading Moby Dick, we could have a high expectation that they can be exposed, right? And have cognitive engagement within those materials and those concepts, but not necessarily that we're saying, oh, look, see, comprehensive literacy didn't work because he couldn't read it. Like, that's not what that means. It means that we have high expectations within that proximal range. And I think, Heidi, that this list too, like whenever I think of that repetition with variety, I just think of my students that, I walk in and they've had the same puzzle since preschool that they've been doing, and they are over it. And so things are flying and we wonder where the behaviors are coming from. And so, they may need repetition of the letters in their name. That doesn't mean it has to be within the same exact activity. And making sure that we're age respectful, I think, with these materials as well. So I think Go Dog Go, I use this as an example all the time, is an amazing, amazing book for when you're when you're a 4-year-old. So it's not an amazing book. Maybe Carnivore would probably yell at me because he's like, Miss Sharon, I like those books too. So our friend Carnivore, but I think that for someone who is in 8th grade, if that's their reading level, that is not the materials, right? That's not the high expectation or the cognitive engagement or the repetition of variety being given to them, or because they don't have a personal connection to that curriculum. They're no longer in preschool, right? So we really need to make sure that we're looking at these elements of successful reading and writing as we look at the age of our learners, and make sure that we're not mistaking what high expectations we want, that we can have high expectations with the materials that are within that proximal range of development. Okay. So Heidi, I think this was one that you wanted to talk about as well. This was one that really popped out to you.
So I think especially with our AAC users and students who are, need some alternative or augmentative communication, we kind of forget the power of the alphabet. So, we've got the picture icons, which are great, which let them say things like, quick and efficiently and some phrases and stuff. But spelling is the one skill that's going to allow them to say what they want to say, when they want to say it, how they want to say it, and to the largest group of audiences. So it's so important that, in addition to modeling their AAC, that we're modeling that alphabet in the AAC and showing them the different things they can do with the alphabet so that they can, really be precise in what they want to say to people. Our friend that Sharon mentioned, Carnivore, he's an eye gaze user, and he uses the alphabet and word prediction, and he's quick.
Very, very skilled,
and funny.
Very quick. And apparently a better speller than I am, seeing that I made a mistake on the first slide. So we're going to call it, shout out to Josh for finding that. So yeah, right. You're right. If individuals do not have access to the equipment that they need. So just in equipment, meaning like access to letters, they can't have access then to learning how to read and write. So we need to make sure that access is to and given to them, if that's what needs to happen, but that they have access to that, and we're moving towards that spelling, because it is our writing for our AAC users is the most, I would argue, the most important skill that they're going to need, because that's their means and mode of communicating with AAC. And so we really need to have kind of our eye on that ball as we're going through and making sure that, that may take some time. I'm not saying that we're going to get there tomorrow, but we really need to make sure that we are starting that journey with them. So those conditions of learning lead us into, and we talked a little bit about the high expectations, and we have here this Literacy Bill of Rights. That was the link will take you to Jane Farrell's think I'm pronouncing her last name right, Jane Farrell's website that has this literacy bill of rights. I encourage you to kind of go and check that out and to read those. We didn't have time tonight to go through that, but when we're looking at those high expectations in chapter 2 and talking about that, they give suggestions, like I talked about that proximal zone of learning. And how do you do that? So daily read alouds I should have highlighted that, with the individual, not necessarily to, but with the individual. Writing or partner assisted writing. Heidi talked about that, how we're going to, when we get into writing throughout this book series, we'll talk more about what that looks like, that partner assisted and assisted in the alternative pencil. Interactions, modeling, symbolic communication, making sure that that our learners who are symbolic are at that developmental symbolic level of language that we are modeling with them. If they're not at that symbolic developmental level, then we need to be modeling where they're at and what does that look like. So shared reading, predictable chart writing, exploring independent student access to books, right? So we're going to be exploring all of these and how we give this. And these are examples of making sure we have high expectations, because the high expectations start with us as teachers, because we need to create those lesson plans. We need to bring this information in. And so if we're just working on sight words, that is I didn't see it in this list. Did you see it, Heidi? Sight words in this list? No. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Didn't see it in the list. Totally important. I'm not gonna, knock the good old, Dolce. She'll probably get mad at me. Sight word list, like it's important, but it's really that we need to kind of move out of that lower level of Scarborough rope, and we need to start moving up and having some high expectations, and that's where these come into place. Heidi, did you want to add anything?
I think that's got it. You got it.
All right. Jump in. Oops. How did that go back? Sorry about that. I'm going to make everybody dizzy. Okay. So this one, who was our friend that was on there that said this? And she was like, read ahead, which I love. So, we talked about this as a foundational level of our learning as we're going through, but all learners are capable of emergent literacy, right? And ultimately, and I get it, teachers, this is a tough pill to swallow, this sentence. It's hard for us to hear this, but when a learning failure, it's a singular instance best characterized as a teaching failure. And that is a mind shift that we need to go through. It's not our students' fault that they're not learning. It's our fault that we haven't figured out how they learn. That's our job. Our job is to learn how our students learn and how they learn best. It's not their job to learn how we teach. That's just not it. And so we need to look, and I as a teacher, I fail all the time, right? But I analyze, I do some self-reflection. I look at, why didn't that go right? What could I do better next time? How can let me go back to this book? Let me see what I can find. Where are the resources that I need so that failure doesn't persist? So.
And what I love about this book is Karen and David did a beautiful job of talking about the things that we've all done wrong for years and not making you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
It's very kind and nurturing and kind of helps you, this is how we've always done it, but it didn't work and this works better. And I just feel so empowered every time I read the book to do something different and try something different and change that mindset a bit. And so I think I hope that you guys appreciate that as you read through the book as much as I do, that it was just let's help you. And I talked to Karen Erickson in February when I was in Florida at a conference. And, I said, that's what I love about your book. And that's what I'm getting from my people, the teams I've done the book study with. And she's like, well, if we wrote it where it was blaming, nobody would ever want to read it. They'd feel so bad about themselves. So it was very intentional to put it together in a way that was very positive and uplifting for us who are teaching students.
But also, and I love that. Yeah. I mean, but also like holding responsibility, and definitely give it, and then giving strategies, not just saying, yeah, that was a teaching failure, but let me here give you an alternative. Let me here give you another way to try to go about that. And I think that is, yeah, it's beautiful. It's really well done. So we know that allocating time is tough stuff. We know that creating this literacy environment is hard, but and we'll talk more about this as we go on. But I just wanted to bring this forward as a little precursor to come. But it's critical that our students receive this daily comprehensive instruction, literacy instruction within all four areas. So, and we're gonna figure out how to do that together. Okay, chapter 6, 5 minutes. Ready, Heidi? We can do it. Go.
Was this me?
Yeah, I think this one was you.
Okay, so looking at like whole text processing print, includes 5 things. So inner speech, and that is one thing that I have really spent a lot of time reading about and talking to my teams about. Even if they can't speak, we all have this inner voice that talks to us all day, and we need to teach our students how to do that. Projecting prosody, that word always messes me up.
It gets me
too. Page 91, so I have my definition here.
I know.
So those patterns and rhythms and, just making it fun to hear instead of just kind of like flat monotone. Making print to meaning lengths, making it like to find something that has some meaning to that student. Teaching eye tracking, eye movements that are used in reading. And we need to integrate all 4 of those things. It's not just one of those things that makes it happen. It's like really integrating all of those things. And the heart of writing is to be able to experience is daily experience in writing to communicate one's thoughts. And so really giving kids opportunities to communicate their thoughts. It's really hysterical what will come out when they do that.
Right. And how important is that for our AAC learners? Right. I mean, right there, communicating one's thoughts. And when you're an AAC user and your whole world is surrounded by print in order to be able to communicate, I mean, that is what that human existence is connecting with others, and connecting with others is being able to communicate your thoughts and your feelings and all that is to be that existence. So I think it's exciting to see the work that's being done in moving forward with writing.
Oh,
I have this one again, or did I go back? I must have accidentally gone back. I don't know. There's something going on with my cursor here. Sorry about that. Chapter 6 also, and I think this is really, I wanted to highlight this because it's one that I missed, not just the first time, second time, third time, fourth time reading it. I don't know. With the pages stuck together, Heidi, I'm not exactly sure what was going on when I read this, but I missed it. And so I'm here to ask you to go to that page, which is, I think it's on page 95, page 95, and look at that anchor, read, and apply. And what you're going to see is how reading comprehension really comes and starts to come to life for our students when you have that anchor, when you then go to read and then go ask them to apply. And so it's a really important component that I think we don't want to miss out on. So take some time. And I love this quote: the text cannot be too easy, but can easily be too hard for students learning to read with comprehension. So ensuring that you are having, I mentioned earlier when I talked about that, proximal zones of learning, like with Moby Dick, like we are not necessarily that would be too hard for one of our students that's reading at maybe an emergent level, or an early context level, like in a kindergarten or first grade. That would just be way too hard. But can we find ways to get them the text that they need in at their level, so that we can and anchor that learning so that they can read and then they can apply those comprehension skills and what they've read. I think it's just so important. Self-directed learning, essential that students with significant disabilities have daily opportunities for self-directed reading. I think you've heard this over and over, daily opportunities for lots of different types within Scarborough's rope. When we went back and looked at that, right, that upper strand and lower strand of what makes reading and writing, that there are daily opportunities. And what Heidi said earlier, like it may not end up happening in the 30-minute block. And maybe you need to look at that and what does that look like for you and for your learners. So we have this activity for our ending thoughts is for you to go on Jamboard. This is a hot link that's linked to our Jamboard. And what we'd like you to do, you don't have to do it today or tonight, but we'd like you to go on, there's 2 boards. Explore Jamboard if you've never used it before, so that you can have that learning on your own. So the next time we come together, we're not having to kind of go through a little tutorial of how to use Jamboard. So go and explore. It's pretty intuitive. And what is your one takeaway from something that today, and what is one thing that you want to learn more about in our next time together? So we're going to be doing, Heidi, I think 11 and 12, right? Next time, is that right? So we're really going to be talking about those assistive technologies and access. We felt like it was important to kind of start talking about how do we give access before we start talking about the others. So disrupting that book sequence just a little bit. So those would be the two chapters that come together for next time.